What's up, folks? I'm going to go add in our friends over there on Twitter and on Facebook, and then we're going to get started. We got a lot to get into today. Just give me a second. We're about to jump in. All right, and we are live. What's up? Welcome in. This is the Falcons Podcast with your host, Garrett Chapman. Give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. Stay fully up to date on everything that we have going on. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to share it with your friends so they can get in on some of this Falcons discussion. But tonight, man, do we have a show for you. What does Kirk Cousins' contract restructuring mean? Is that good for Atlanta? Is it bad? What does it mean about his future here in the city? How good of a job even is Atlanta? Who will they target? What does that look like? Of course, John Harbaugh. He was just fired by the Baltimore Ravens. I gasped when I saw it, and immediately it changes everything for what we were talking about today. I had this whole show lined up. I had everything that was lined up, and I was about to dive into all of it, and I still can. But at the same time, John Harbaugh just became priority number one for the Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk about that. I will take your questions. Make sure to drop those into the chat below, and we will get into all of that. And just a reminder, too, super chats. Those are the best way to support me, to support this channel. And Scott, he threatened to kick me out of here if I don't get any super chats. So just make sure to drop those in there. Really very much appreciate all of you guys for doing that. But let's start here. Of course, with the John Harbaugh news, I'm going to get to your comments and questions as much as I can throughout the show. But of course, he is the former Ravens head coach, 18 years in Baltimore. 18 years. That goes back to when I was in, middle school. And he had signed a 3-year deal last offseason. He was under contract through the 2028 season. He's just 64 years old. He's still got at least a decade left in the NFL, potentially, right? I mean, there's no way he retires. No way he retires. Because he just jumped to the top of every single wish list in the NFL. But, I mean, I understand the hesitancy for some people. 11 double-digit win seasons, whatever, right? But oftentimes they did become synonymous with late-game collapses. They had 46 fourth-quarter leads that that squandered, basically, since 2008. That's the second most in the NFL in that span. And that is something to keep in mind here. But at the same time, he wins. He's consistently got that team up at the top of the NFL. They're always making the right decisions, seemingly. That's just what it feels like from the outside looking in. And he's 12th in the NFL all time for wins by a head coach. He's got 193 plus the Super Bowl championship that he won against his brother Jim Harbaugh in 2012, the Super Bowl that the Falcons should have been in that game. But you know what, whatever. But recently the playoff results haven't been there. Some of them, it's just, plays go against you a bit. And ultimately, you're playing against Patrick Mahomes. You're playing against Josh Allen. If he came to Atlanta, I think that'd be pretty good. That'd be a pretty good situation. And he just has the one AFC title game appearance since the Super Bowl. But look, he is the most qualified head coach on the market right now, bar none. Bar none. There is no number two. You can talk about Stefanski. You can talk about McCarthy. You can talk about these other guys. Some of them do have Super Bowl championships like McCarthy does, but this is by far one of the highest regarded NFL coaches in the league right now. And when I tell you that people were absolutely stunned when this news came around, just looking up and down Twitter, it's the perfect example of how stunned I was, how stunned everybody else is too. And that kind of gets me into the biggest thing is he's going to have a lot of suitors. He's going to want to go places where he's going to have some say. And it's going to be an interesting situation there for him because of the way that the Falcons are going to be structured now. The head coach is not going to have a lot of say. The head coach is not going to be able to say a whole bunch. And it's going to be the general manager makes the personnel decisions. You're going to have the head coach who's going to coach the team. And then both of them are going to report to the president of football. Right? That's very similar to how a lot of other teams do it, but it's not that collaborative sort of effort that had existed here in Atlanta before that. It's interesting to see that. I don't think it's going to be a disqualifier, I guess, for the Falcons, but one thing that it does get into is cap flexibility. What does the team look like moving forward? Talent, everything else like that. I think that makes it a very interesting thing. Let's see. Corey B. Carter says Rich McKay is no longer involved in football. Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people looked at. And again, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate all of those. Anything that you got, I really appreciate you. Rich McKay, of course, that was the big news from Monday that he's no longer involved in football operations, which Technically, the team said that already. They said that like a year ago, and then when they redistributed everything in the organization, they said he was going to be focused on Atlanta United. That since just wasn't necessarily true. But now he's officially no longer involved in football activities and things of that nature. And now we assume it's going to be Matt Ryan. We assume that's what it's going to be, but we obviously do not know that necessarily. All right. Dossier Gaming says, hey, Garrett, if I'm Atlanta, I'm calling Harbaugh's agent immediately to get someone like him in on the ground floor of a restructure, and to get him to set a winning culture is priceless. Yeah. I mean, look, the guy wins. He wins at a high level, and that's exactly what the Falcons need in this organization right now. They need somebody who can come in and set the standard of winning. And that's one of the reasons, ironically, that I had McCarthy in my top 4, top 5 on my hot board. I had him very high on my list for that same reason, because he has a Super Bowl, because he's been able to do things at a high level, both with the Packers and then again with the Cowboys. Bringing that sort of winning mentality to Atlanta matters. It matters a whole hell of a lot, right? And if I'm Atlanta, I agree. He's the next phone call that I'm making. I am already on the phone with him, and I'm no joke, just checking my phone every opportunity that I get to make sure that, oh, yeah, okay, no, not yet, okay. I'm waiting, just like everybody else is, for the Atlanta Falcons to make that call. And yeah. So Bryce is wrong, says crazy news, going to be a stressful coaching carousel. Yeah, it definitely is. Dirty Bird Star said, made it live for the first time in a while. The head coach just heated up. Well, welcome. Thank you so much. And appreciate anybody who it is their first time. For anybody who is not familiar with me, my name is Garrett Chapman. I am the host of the Falcons Podcast. We do this every Tuesday and Thursday. Try to run inverted to what Scott does. He does everything on Mondays and on Wednesdays. But of course, now that we're getting into the offseason, especially with this coaching carousel and everything else like that, we are going to be doing this all throughout the offseason. So we're going to try to do this as much as we possibly can. So make sure to set that reminder and jump in here with us. AJ says John Harbaugh has to be at the top of the list now, unless you can guarantee me LaFleur or Shanny. Shanny? I mean, you're not getting Shanahan. It's Harbaugh. You left one Harbaugh out of the building 2 years ago. Don't do it again. I don't think Jim Harbaugh wanted to come to Atlanta. That was my feeling, I guess you could say. I feel like Raheem was very high on their list. They really liked Raheem. I liked Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was my top candidate the first time around, and John Harbaugh is now my top candidate the second time around. You got another bite at the apple. That's a good way to put it. And Jim Harbaugh, all he does is win. John Harbaugh, all he does is win. They only have one Super Bowl between the two of them, but they also had that one where they competed with each other, right? So that was an all-timer, but they've had their opportunities, and they've gotten there, and they consistently get their teams to the top end of the NFL. And they win consistently. That's something that this city has not had really ever. I mean, even in the heyday of the Matt Ryan era, which is admittedly the best era in Falcon football history, you didn't win consistently. That was not something. You had several losing seasons. You had more losing seasons, I believe, in the Matt Ryan era than John Harbaugh has had in his entire career going back to 2007. So it's just something that you want to get him in. You want him in the building. You want him in the building as much as you can. The Price is Wrong comes in with an interesting question. Says, are we worried about the complaints of Harbaugh not using Henry much and it carrying over with Bijan? Two different situations. I think that's as much a Monken thing as it is a Harbaugh thing. Would he bring Todd Monken back here to the state of Georgia? Monken, of course, he coached as the offensive coordinator at the University of Georgia for a few years. Won a couple of national championships here. I don't think that we need to put too much emphasis on what he does with Derrick Henry as much as it is Bijan Robinson's a different football player. They're completely different types of players. Bijan, you're going to split him out wide. You're going to get him touches out wide as much as you are in the middle. And the stuff on Henry is fair. I get some of the qualms, I guess you could say, that people have for the lack of utilization for Derrick Henry. But Derrick Henry is also 31 years old? I mean, he's up there, right? For a running back, he's a little bit older. Hasn't really worn down just looking at his body and the way that he's been able to consistently produce. But, I mean, no, to answer your question, just because they're different types of players. But if keeping him fresh if that's the way to do it, then that's what we got to do. Keep on rolling through. See, David says, damn, it's a shame the Giants gig is open. Yeah, I've actually seen some reports that Harbaugh could be linked to this gig up there in New York. I think that There are probably some other coaching spots that might open up. I'm not basing that on anything that I know, whether that's insider information or not. It's not. But no, I mean, if I'm, there are a lot of other jobs that might come open as a result, assuming they have some kind of relationship with Harbaugh. If they think that they can get John Harbaugh, some people might be able to make a move. And I would be very surprised if the Giants are not another one of those teams who are picking up the phone right now and calling Harbaugh's agent. I think that would make a whole lot of sense for the Giants just in general. But is the Giants gig any better than the Falcons gig? I don't tend to think it is. I mean, you look at the talent that's already here in the Falcons organization. You look at they've got a great defense up there in New York. A couple young pieces there. I mean, Abdul Carter's a freak of nature. Brian Burns is a freak. You got some great pieces there. You got a young quarterback in Jackson Dart, but you've got the high first-round pick too, which the Falcons don't have a first-round pick. So maybe he wants to do that route, but I don't see him staying in the AFC. I could see him coming to one of the NFC teams with an opening. But is this Falcons job that much worse? I don't think it is, because you're in a winnable division. And we can actually dig into this real quick. David, you actually get me into this, and you're one of our subscribers. Big thank you to you. The question becomes of how good of a job is it here in Atlanta? And Steve Weiss talked about this. He works for the NFL Network. There are a lot of good spots that the Falcons find themselves in coming into this offseason. The biggest question, of course, immediately comes back to what the quarterback position looks like, right? The Ravens, obviously, they jump to the top of this list because, well, you have Lamar Jackson and everything else that's on top of that. I'd say the Giants look pretty good. I'd say that the Browns look pretty good too, assuming they can figure out who their quarterback's going to be moving forward. I've seen some people put us as low as 5 on this list, some even as in 6th. But we're a better job than the Raiders. We're a better job than I pulled up this list of vacancies because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any. But the Falcons are a better job than the Titans. They have a good bit of cap space, so you'll have a lot of flexibility moving forward if you're the Titans, and they have a young quarterback who's exciting, and with Cam Ward, you might be able to flip your season around and turn around pretty quickly, kind of similar to what they did up in New England. So that makes that job kind of appealing. The Cardinals are similar to the Falcons, but not nearly as much flexibility at the quarterback position. Kyler Murray is owed $37 million or something like that next year, and he's going to be your quarterback moving forward, unless you release him, and then it's going to be a very expensive deal. And it's just the Falcons that you just have the quarterback spot because you have an elite running back, you have an elite wide receiver. You need a wide receiver too that I think that you can find pretty good value for in the second round of the draft next year. You've got young pieces on defense. You're pretty well set, right? And if you retain Jeff Ulbrich, you run it back and maybe you flesh out the linebacker position. You find a nose. You maybe go and pursue another cornerback. You've got options. You've got a lot of guys that you can potentially lean on. You have your cornerstones of your franchise that are still there. And then if you can find kind of a veteran quarterback to kind of lead Michael Penix along, then all of a sudden the Falcons organization looks pretty damn good, right? Because you're going to have some money clear up. And we'll get into the Kirk Cousins news here in just a little bit, but you're going to have some money open up, right? And that's going to be enough for you to potentially look at a new quarterback, look at that and see what you can do with that direction. And ultimately, a lot of the attraction for the job for another head coach is going to come down to what they think of Michael Penix. If they like Michael Penix, then this automatically becomes a really, really good job, right? Because the previous staff, they saw the comparisons to Matthew Stafford, and they saw the arm talent. They saw some of the ability. They saw enough mobility that you're able to move around in the pocket and make things happen. He's pretty intelligent. He's smart with the football. But he has a big arm and he could throw the ball all over the field. And as two guys offensively, several guys who came from the Rams organization, they really saw that and got excited. You know, does the next coaching staff and regime see something similar to Michael Penix? That's what it comes back to. And that's what folks are going to think is attractive about this job or not. But at the same time, he's a young quarterback. You can move off him. You won't have your guy for next season, unless you go find somebody like a Sam Darnold, and you go find a journeyman who can kind of take your team to the next level, which, I mean, teams have done it. Several teams have done it, and it would not be all that surprising. The Vikings did it last year. I mean, ironically, with the same person, but the Vikings did it last year. They rode it to a playoff streak or a playoff appearance and damn near a number one overall seed. The Seahawks are the number one overall seed this year, right? You can do it, just finding that right guy. But there are a lot of coaches here that I think would be pretty optimal, just looking at all these other spots. But here, I do want to get to Rusty's comment here. Of course, it's a super chat. If you want to steal my attention and grab a super chat so we can divert the conversation, make sure to drop it in there, and I will do that right away. So big shout out to you, Rusty. Big thank you. So is it not going offense for head coach negligent? Don't we need to see if Penix is it or not? I feel that Kubiak and Stefanski could determine that more than Flores. I tend to agree. I think that that's kind of the direction that I'm leaning at this point. I love the idea of having just a steady-minded coach. That's kind of what Harbaugh is, but you've seen him sort of run into some of these issues, whether it's Greg Roman or Todd Monken more recently, where you lose the brilliant offensive mind, and then all of a sudden you're left kind of figuring it out and trying to see what you can do, where Andy Reid doesn't really run into those issues because it's his offense. Shanahan doesn't run into those issues. LaFleur doesn't run into those issues. Sean McVay doesn't run into those issues. Liam Cohen, obviously he's still only in year one, but that's going to be the situation. You're a bright offensive mind, and as a result, you're just a bright offensive mind, and you get the right players, you figure it out for your system, and then you go from there, right? Harbaugh is just a great head coach. Harbaugh is just top of the line. He's going to maintain a standard, and that's what I want from my head coach. You're going to take more of a risk with a young offensive mind, a young play caller, because they flame out all the time. The young guys on offensive coordinators, I mean, when they get their jobs as head coaches, there's no guarantee that that's going to work. There's no guarantee at all. So that's why he immediately becomes number one. And I've got offensive minds as my numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. But when you have an elite head coach who's shown that he can win at a high level, who's proven that he can win at a high level, it immediately becomes the top priority for you as an organization. So that's why he is my number one. All right, but I appreciate the question. Rusty, I really do appreciate it. If anybody else has a super chat or a big question that they want to get in, I will be more than happy to jump into it. I'm going to go back to some of your comments here. Here we go. Actually, let's see. JLTCDM369 says, what do you think of Kirk Cousins restructuring? What do you think it means? Options for the incoming regime, security for Penix, injury. I'm just going to be pretty blunt about it. I mean, I think it means that he's no longer the Atlanta Falcons quarterback of the future, at least on this current deal. So going back into the report that came out from Field Yates from ESPN, the Falcons, they don't have a head coach. They don't have a GM, obviously, but they're still making some moves. Okay. So they restructured Kirk Cousins' contract, and it gives the team more financial flexibility this spring and allows Cousins to essentially advertise to the rest of the league that, hey, I'm going to be a free agent by March 12th, or teams are like, hey, he's going to be a free agent. We don't want to get into a bidding war. Let's go sign him or let's go trade for him, which I don't think is going to happen. But theoretically, it's possible. But the biggest thing is that the Falcons convert his 2026 salary from $35 million down to $2.1 million. And I got that information from Spotrac. And the leftover $32 million, 32.9 to be exact, that is moving to his 2027 base salary. So his total salary for that season is now $67.9 million. And the move essentially guarantees that Cousins is going to be released before that deadline, basically of March 12th. March 13th, it becomes guaranteed, and it becomes due to him, right? If he's still on the roster at that time, which he's not. And what they're going to do then is they're going to release him with a post-June 1 designation, and that's going to cost the Falcons somewhere in the range of about $35 million in dead cap money. And that's going to be split into two because it's a post-June 1st. You're able to do that. You're able to split it between 2026, which you would spread $22.5 million, and then to 2027, it's going to be $12.5 million in dead cap. So it's not really that bad. Ultimately, the Falcons are going to be able to get out from underneath this, and it's good for Kirk because it means that he's going to get his guaranteed money. He's going to get what's owed to him. So he likes that. And then for the Falcons, they can get away from some of this dead cap money. And it gives them some flexibility. So ultimately they're going to be able to spend a little bit of money coming out as soon as they get into free agency. It's going to give him some more because his base salary was lessened as much as it was. And then on the flip side, it's going to give them more flexibility post June 1st to sign their rookies, to get guys in training camp, grab guys like that. So generally you want teams to have about $10 million after that deadline. And then it's going to help them get square, which they have to do before certain periods in the offseason. They have to make sure that their money is completely good. But ultimately Kirk Cousins, I mean, his time in Atlanta, I'm assuming it's going to be over. It's not officially over yet. We have until March 12th to have that news officially come down the line. I'm assuming it's going to come out exactly on March 12th, if I had to be exact. But he goes down. He's 5-2 as a starter coming down the stretch. He was 21st in EPA per dropback. It wasn't great, but he got better as the season went on, or at least during that stretch, right after Michael Penix got hurt. He averaged 210 yards passing per game, but his lows were not great. He was routinely in the hundreds. He had the one breakout performance against the Buccaneers. But he has five interceptions. He's got 10 touchdowns, but 5-2 got the Falcons back up to a respectable 8-9, but it wasn't enough to save jobs of members of the coaching staff. So ultimately it becomes a bit of a failure. I think there's no real way to kind of sugarcoat that fact and that reality of Kirk Cousins and it just not working out here in Atlanta. It goes back to the very beginning, which again is one of the reasons why Terry Fontenot and maybe not as much Raheem Morris, but specifically Terry Fontenot, that's why he was fired. I mean, you messed up the quarterback position and you paid a lot of money to make sure that it was going to be figured out. You know, that was the guarantee that you made to Arthur Blank is that, look, we've been in this quarterback carousel and we want to get out of it. We guarantee you that signing this guy to a $180 million contract 2 years ago was going to be enough to get him out of quarterback purgatory. And it wasn't. And they're right back into the thick of it. And now they face just as many questions as they did before. But they've got an exciting young quarterback with Michael Penix and what we're going to learn pretty quickly what other coaches and folks around the NFL think about him, because that's going to be what lines up to potentially get in there and see who wants to sign up. Let's see. Holden Boy is Fly says, how much would Matt Ryan have in this? Timing of his hire feels very important in this process since you don't want to miss the best guy. So Matt Ryan, it's supposedly his job, and I appreciate that. Big shout out to my man Holden. So Matt is supposedly going to be hired at some point Thursday, Friday, or that's when his interview is going to be taking place. The president of football is going to be the first big domino to fall. After that, you're going to figure out a whole lot more just in general down the stretch, right? So if you're going to hire them, then he's going to have a big role in who the eventual general manager is, who the eventual head coach is going to be, just because they're going to be reporting to him. And you have the two Sportsology and the ZRG associates that are going to be working closely with Arthur Blank and the rest of the ownership group to figure out who all these guys are. But the job's effectively been offered to Matt Ryan, just not officially, because you have the Rooney Rule and things like that, things of that nature that you have to figure out and you have to satisfy before you can officially announce a hire. So that kind of tells me that when Arthur Blank speaks to the media on Thursday, he's going to have Matt Ryan standing there right next to him. That was my impression, at least. But of course, I saw another result or another report from somebody else. And big thank you for the super chat there. It tells me that he's waiting until after Arthur Blank speaks. And then after that, then potentially they're going to have another press conference after that. So just depending on how it kind of all fleshes out, I think Matt Ryan is going to have a pretty large say in everything that goes on with this. And all of this is mostly hot air until we get that president of football hired. After that happens, the rest of it can really come together. But you're still going to get your requests out. You're still going to get all of that taken care of. And that's kind of where we get into kind of my hot board here for what I want in the Falcons organization. I talked to Scott about this on Sunday evening after the news came down that both Terry and Raheem were fired. And this is one of the big things that you have to do right now is you have to get these requests in as quickly as you can, because Clint Kubiak and Kevin Stefanski and these other guys, they're going to be scooped up pretty quickly. And Clint Kubiak specifically, and all these guys who are in the postseason right now, they only have a finite window for when they can speak with other teams because of league rules. They say that you have to allow them to coach their own teams. This isn't college football. This isn't Lane Kiffin swiping people from Ole Miss in the midst of their playoff run. They actually do something to protect these guys. They actually do something to protect the other teams. Okay. And Clint Kubiak is a perfect example of that. The Falcons did put a request in to go speak with him. And that is the first big thing that they can do. So they can speak with him. Falcons brass can speak with him. I believe it's going to be Thursday or Friday. That's going to be their window. And they can only speak with him because the Seahawks are the number 1 seed in the NFC. The other one that they've put a request in is Vance Joseph. He's the Broncos defensive coordinator. And that's also because the Broncos are the number 1 seed in the AFC. So that's the only reason they put those requests in. They also have requests out there for Kevin Stefanski. He's just a free agent. He was fired by the Browns earlier this week. And then Anthony Weaver, they can speak with him, I believe, starting on Wednesday. They have to get through all their postseason stuff and figure everything out. They're not in the playoffs, so there's no rules based off of that. So if they allow him to come speak, which he's still under contract, so you still have to go get permission from his team. Assuming they do, and they will, then that's going to be the next person. But it's only 4 coaches that the Falcons have put requests into. Of that list, Kevin Stefanski is number 1 for the same reason that Harbaugh is. Just Harbaugh just like way up here versus Stefanski way down there. I mean, he's a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. He's won pretty decently, considering where he was. The Browns are not a very sound organization, but he still found a way to, get them up and into a successful place, I guess you could say. They've just had a bad quarterback situation, and they've been a carousel of their own. And I mean, going back to Baker Mayfield in 2021, you had a different quarterback lead you in passing every single year. And that goes back to their disastrous decision to make the trade for Deshaun Watson in 2022. He has not led them in passing once. He's been an absolute off-field distraction and hasn't been able to stay healthy. And when he is healthy, he's been downright terrible for them. And it's been kind of a tough scene for the Browns, but that's not on Kevin Stefanski. But at the same time, he was still able to take him to the playoffs twice in that span. So he's a guy who's going to have a lot of suitors. People are going to be lining up to speak with him as well. Clint Kubiak is really the top guy on the market right now as far as the young up-and-coming coach is concerned. He's out there with the Seahawks. He was with the Saints before that. Got the most out of Sam Darnold. He got the most out of Derek Carr. And he had those guys really competing at a high level. And with the Seahawks, I mean, he's tops in the NFL in terms of scoring, in terms of output. He does it with balance. He does it with lots of effectiveness. And he did it with Sam Darnold as his quarterback, right? So ultimately, that's going to be something that's very appealing. And I can't remember who exactly I had the comment here, or the question, but it's the young up-and-coming coach. He's the son of a coach. He's kind of in his blood. So it's not something that I feel like is going to overwhelm him necessarily. But at the same time, I think he's the exciting name. And I think that the Falcons are going to be pretty high on his list. But admittedly, the change here in Baltimore is going to affect that. But we have another super chat. I'm going to drop it and come on in here. Dossier Gaming says, Matt Ryan has ties to Ian Cunningham, who has ties to John Harbaugh. Also, Schefter said 7 teams called Harbaugh's agent already. That does not surprise me whatsoever. Not even in the slightest. I think the idea that Harbaugh is going to be spending any extended period of time on the open market is a little funny to me. There's just no chance that happens, right? He's going to be scooped up and he's going to be hired instantly. It's just, can the Falcons get involved in time to kind of get up top his list? And it says, as Shefty says, 7 teams called him. I think there were only 7 vacancies aside from, well, there are 7 total vacancies, including the Ravens. So that means 6 teams have been in contact with him already. Assuming I guess the 7th would be the Ravens trying to get his goodbye put together. But appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the donation. Really do appreciate that. Anybody else? Again, if you want to take my attention and take me straight to it, super chat is the best way to do that. But no, Matt Ryan does have those ties to Ian Cunningham. He has those through Ryan Poles, who he played with when he was with Boston College back in the mid-2000s. Poles was his offensive lineman, and Poles is the general manager for the Chicago Bears. Ian Cunningham is the assistant general manager for those same Chicago Bears. And I'm going to get to I'm going to table that for 2 seconds because I want to finish out this list of head coaches, and then I'm going to get into the general manager kind of discussion here that I have planned. Well, actually, no, screw that. I'm just going to dive right into it. So Cunningham is my top option to be general manager. I really just like the idea of a guy who has a proven track record, who has done it in a lot of different ways. He's touched every aspect of the organization just in general. He started in scouting. He's gone all the way up through those ranks. He's now all the way. He's done personnel. He's done pro scouting. He's done college scouting. He's done cap stuff. I think that kind of situation makes it very attractive. And I think the idea of having him in here makes it a really good candidate to be the head or to be the general manager here in Atlanta. I'm trying to find here. I clicked on the wrong thing. I got to pull up this list. And then some of my other people, just because obviously there's so many of them and I want to make sure that I'm not forgetting anybody. I want to pull this up. All right. So the next big one. So Ian Cunningham is my top one. He has the experience with Ozzie Newsome. He has the experience with Howie Roseman. He won a Super Bowl championship with both. And then Cunningham, like was mentioned here from the super chat, he was with Ozzie Newsome. He was with John Harbaugh. That was a big time that they spent together. And then he goes from there to Howie Roseman's camp and won a Super Bowl with them in 2017. It's no mistake. I mean, winners win. And you want to be associated with somebody who knows how to win. And that's kind of what Cunningham is. So that's why Cunningham is really going to be my top option. But Alec Halaby, speaking of Howie Roseman, you want to play a little copycat of the best teams in the NFL. The Philadelphia Eagles are the poster child of the top end teams in the NFL right now. It's them, plus it's the Kansas City Chiefs, but they have Patrick Mahomes, and that's a little bit harder to replicate. Halaby and Roseman. Halaby is pretty much a carbon copy, as what I've heard and read several different times. He is a carbon copy of Howie Roseman in Philadelphia. They're pretty similar, and they work in lockstep in effectively every single capacity. He's there in Philly right now, and he's a heavy analytics background. I talked about this one with Scott on Sunday, and he's been there since 2007, since he graduated from Harvard. He's been there ever since, and he was promoted to assistant general manager after Cunningham left. And he's been the VP of football operations and strategy. But he does a lot with roster management and evaluation and resource allocation. And ultimately, I like the analytical approach from a general manager because I just want them to make the right decisions based on things. I don't need them to be great scouts. That's might sound a little weird to somebody just from the outside, but they just need to be very effective decision makers. And based off of his background, based off of what I've seen, Halaby's another guy who I think could be just a great decision maker, because that's what Howie Roseman is. Howie Roseman his background was in finance. His background's not in scouting. His background was making good decisions. And oftentimes analytics, as much as people like to crap on them, all it does is help you make the best, most logical decision in place, right? That's what made Howie Roseman so great. And that's what's made the Philadelphia Eagles such a great organization, and why they're winning at such a high level, because you're making shrewd business decisions in the draft and in free agency and with contracts and things like that. And if you're able to do that, it's a lot to be said for it. So that's why he's pretty high on that list for me as well. But John Eric Sullivan's another. He's with the Green Bay Packers. He's the vice president of player personnel. He was reportedly a finalist for the Titans job last year, which means he's definitely going to get some looks. So he's the son of a longtime NFL receivers coach of Jerry Sullivan. He's good with marrying talent to personnel, or head coaching talent to personnel. He did the same thing with Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. He had a big role in that process. Terrence Gray's another. He's the assistant GM for the Buffalo Bills. That's a guy who, if you want a kind of a more old school look, that's the direction that you could go there. He's done a lot of roster building for them. He's another guy who's been in the thick of this search. He goes back to last cycle. He was with the Raiders, and he interviewed for the Chargers and the Titans and the Jags and a lot of different places. So he's going to be there. Ed Dodds is another old school guy, very similar to some of the people who did cut his teeth in college recruiting, or college scouting, I should say. He does a lot with player evaluation. And he worked really closely with Chris Ballard just through the 2010s, and then John Schneider with the Seahawks when they were building the Legion of Boom and stuff like that. So he's an old school guy. He's a guy who's going to give you a kind of a shrewd look at what your roster really looks like, and he's going to be able to identify some talent. But look, you can check out the full list. Head on over to Atlanta Falcons on SI. I've got the hot board that you can go find. I've got the current list, so the running list of people that they have spoken with. Or at least have requested to speak with. It's only one right now. It's just Ian Cunningham for the general manager position. But ultimately, it's going to come down to who Matt Ryan or whomever else occupies that role. It's going to come down to what they want. And whoever that president of football is going to be, Matt Ryan, should he decline, then it could be somebody else. But that's going to be the first big domino that's going to fall. But then other head coaches to keep an eye on. I mean, Joe Brady is one that a lot of people are going to be looking at. Bright, young mind. Of course, he coached Josh Allen here in Buffalo. He coached Joe Burrow down there in Baton Rouge with LSU. Chris Shula, he's the grandson of Don Shula. He's going to be a name to keep an eye on in this cycle. Mike LaFleur, the brother of Matt LaFleur. He's the offensive coordinator out there at the Rams. So if you want to go through and kind of dig into that route and you want to kind of try the Rams thing again, he's the exciting young coach who's going to get a lot of interviews. He's going to get a lot of looks. Brian Flores, he had one big opportunity with the Miami Dolphins. And of course, I don't have to tell anybody how that ended. It did not end pretty. And I don't think it was particularly fair to Mr. Flores, but he's going to get another opportunity to coach in the NFL. He's too good of a coach. And I think that would be a shame if he doesn't get that chance. And I think he will. Whether or not people can pry him out, I will see. Robert Saleh is the other one that I'm very interested in. I think the idea of him coming to Atlanta means you're going to keep Jeff Ulbrich. That means that I'd say that he's a pretty good coach, but he's one of those defensive-minded guys. And he's going to come in and I'd say shift the identity of what this franchise is and has been for a while. And I think that you've kind of been going that direction, right? You're kind of moving in that way. I talked about this last week when I was talking about New Year's resolutions for the Falcons before week 18. You're kind of moving into a defensive first mentality, right? If you really want to go all in on that, you go sign another linebacker, go get another cornerback, go get some defensive linemen, bring in Robert Saleh to be your head coach and bring Jeff Ulbrich back to be your defensive coordinator and just go all in. And pound the rock, maybe bring back another running back and kind of do things that way. Maybe you want to go that old school type of approach and pound the rock and play really good defense. Seems to work for a lot of teams, especially in this day and age where quarterback play it's obviously it's extremely important, but you don't see teams throwing it down the field nearly as much as they used to. That's just the reality of this NFL. The top seeds in the NFC and the AFC, they play really good defense. So maybe a Saleh is not the worst idea, right? You are going to have to find a great play caller to kind of marry that strong defense with a really good offense. That's what's worked so well for Mike McDonald out there in Seattle. Whether or not he's able to continue that when you lose Clint Kubiak is going to be a different question entirely. But as far as the here and now, if you can find that elite play caller, which maybe you go get Cliff Kingsbury, who was just ousted in Washington, you go get him, you pair him with Robert Saleh as your head coach and get Jeff Ulbrich to be your defensive coordinator, bam. That's a group that could potentially contend pretty quickly. Again, assuming that you have the quarterback that you want and you have the quarterback that you really want to invest in moving forward. But that's going to be the biggest question is are you interested in trying to go do that? And again, the Pittsburgh Steelers are still on the clock. They could theoretically part ways with Mike Tomlin. And then the Steelers instantly become one of the most attractive jobs that comes open. And then Tomlin becomes a guy that I think a lot of people would be very interested in moving forward. Let me get through here. I've got a lot of chats in here, so I'm going to do my best to try and get through to as many of these as I can. If you want to jump straight to the top, super chats those are the best way to do that. Let me keep going. AJ, let's jump into this one. So he says, there's no way you choose an unproven head coach or a failed one over a guy who has a Super Bowl and 180 and 113 record. I tend to agree. I think that ultimately John Harbaugh, that's why he's the best guy out there on the market. And why are they not good? Why are the fans upset? Because the fans are spoiled. Yes. That's always the reason, right? No, they haven't been able to win. They haven't been able to get over the hump. They've won a lot of games. And I think that's ultimately the best thing for the Falcons is just get a guy who can win, get a guy who can come in and get you to that next level. I mean, we can't complain about not winning a Super Bowl if you haven't made the playoffs in 8 years. It's been a long time, and the Falcons and the Ravens are two dramatically different franchises. And I think having a guy like John Harbaugh, it immediately raises the floor of what this team can be. And I mean, the Falcons are pretty damn talented. The Falcons have plenty of it. You have a solid offensive line. You have a questions at quarterback, which I think are going to be addressed this offseason. You're going to have to. You have the best running back in the NFL in Bijan Robinson. You've got an elite wide receiver in Drake London. You have a exciting young defense on the other side. It's attractive. It's attractive. And now that you have Kirk Cousins with his restructured deal, it changes things just a little bit more. Let's see. Black Mario 618 says, first time new sub. Thank you. Welcome to the channel. Get Harbaugh on the phone now and see if he can somehow get Lamar too. Lamar that's going to be too much. I don't think that Lamar is going anywhere. Harbaugh, great. I love Harbaugh. I love the idea of that. And ideally you could theoretically get him, right? If you wanted Lamar, no, they're not trading him. He's a 2-time MVP winning quarterback. He's not going anywhere. I mean, if they had their chance when, like a couple of years ago when he was available, and I know everybody was up in arms about the Falcons and these other teams not asking or sending trade requests for Lamar Jackson, it's because Lamar was never going to get traded. That was the reality of that situation. They're not trading him. He's a multi-MVP winning quarterback, and that's not somebody who does that. You just don't trade that guy. I see some other things. I'm going to try to get to some of the newer comments here. So AJ says, because he's due a raise and because I think it's more LaFleur than him, I don't want to sign Malik Willis. I think you're talking about LaFleur there. I do believe. And yeah, so look, there are a lot of situations here. Here's Dossier says, Adam Schefter in the first 45 minutes after John Harbaugh was fired this afternoon, his agent Byron Harlan said he received calls from 7 NFL teams expressing interest in his client. Okay, so if that's the quote, that means there's a 7th team who still has a head coach. They still have a head coach employed, which, again, that tells me that if Harbaugh's going to have his list of people, and it's not just the jobs that are open right now. We don't know if those 7 teams include teams who have not fired their coach or who have fired their coach, who have not fired their coach. Because the fact that there are 7, that there are only 7 openings, and one of those openings is Baltimore, and Baltimore's not picking up the phone and calling him. So you have 6 teams. I'm assuming that means the 6 teams who have openings have already called him, and then the one, we'll see how that is, but it could not break that way. It could break in a lot of different ways, which could be very interesting. Keep on going through. Yeah. So second and short, Falcons report says, did you see Ian Cunningham's also interviewing for president? Seems to get compliant. LOL. There are a couple of players or a couple of guys who have been on that list. And the Falcons, I mean, they have to satisfy the Rooney Rule. They have to do that. That's just a reality in the NFL. They are interviewing Cunningham for the same position as Matt Ryan. He could get it, right? I mean, theoretically, he can come in and be your team president, and then you're going to go find somebody else to go be your general manager. And like I mentioned before with Cunningham, he's my top candidate to be general manager. And it's because he's had his fingers in every pie that there's been. And he's had the Ravens stop, he's had the Eagles stop, and now he's with the Bears. And since he's been with the Bears, they've certainly been on an uptick. With Ryan Poles as the general manager, I mean, he's been involved with them as well. And they're just now making that postseason run. But it's been stock up here for a little while now. And that first pick that they had, first pick overall, came from the move that they made with the Carolina Panthers. When they moved up and then they sucked as bad as they did, they just got their first round pick that was just so happened to be pick number 1 overall. Cunningham had a lot to do with that. And that success that they've had in recent years, that has a lot to do with that indeed. Donovan says 2013, 2012 season was a long time ago. You're right. You're right. And in the time since, John Harbaugh has not had a ton of success. He's been to one AFC championship game since then. It's been a while for them. But again, Josh Allen exists in the AFC. You have the Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL in the AFC. There's a lot of talent in the AFC, and it's very difficult to win. Obviously, it's difficult to win here in the NFC as well, but you don't have that elite quarterback that's standing in your way. And Harbaugh is also, if you want to talk about raising the floor, which that's where the Falcons are right now. You're raising the floor of what you're expecting to do. Falcons just need to get to the playoffs. We can't talk about Super Bowls and other stuff like that until this team makes the playoffs. It's been 8 years that we've been without the Falcons in the postseason. 8 years. That damn stadium was built in 2017 and has hosted more Super Bowls than it has playoff games for the Falcons. That's unacceptable. And so until that changes, playoff success is something that I'm not worried about right now. It's just not something that even factors into my brain right now. You know, I mean, of course, theoretically, I want them to come in here and win titles and get you to the Super Bowl and win NFC championships and stuff like that. Of course I do. Of course. But right now, you just need to make it. You're not even in the dance. You can't talk about who you're dancing with, right? That's just not where the Falcons are. The Falcons need, and I see some people dropping it in here, you need a winner. You need somebody who can come in here and win. John Harrell says he's a subscriber. Big thank you for being a subscriber here. I don't want another defensive head coach unless it's John. Okay, that's fine. And again, I tend to agree with that sentiment. I tend to agree with that. There are some great head coaches that are just on the defensive side. You know, I mentioned Robert Saleh, and I think that if you can find that and marry that personality, that would be pretty cool to have that here in Atlanta. And that also likely ensures that Jeff Ulbrich is going to be your guy coming back here to Atlanta, which I think is very important. But ultimately, you go get a great quarterback. A great quarterback is really the most important thing. Above all, you have to have that elite quarterback. And is Michael Penix that guy? Maybe an elite offensive mind can come in here and figure that out for us and kind of help us take that to the next level. We'll kind of keep coming through here. Stephanie Houston says, hey, what's up, Garrett? Hello. How are you? Kubiak is the best candidate, says Baby Driver 8844. Kubiak is my top one. Kubiak is my top candidate. I do think that Kubiak is the most exciting candidate of the younger folks, right? Stefanski, I mean, he's a great one. I think that Stefanski is going to be one that I'm going to be looking forward to potentially getting in here. They're going to interview him. He's on the list. But Kubiak is, if you want the young, you want to take a risk, I guess you could say, Kubiak's going to be that guy. And I do think that ultimately Kubiak is going to go to now. I don't know what the connection is necessarily. And then I'm literally just sitting here pontificating. Kubiak, I feel like, would make a lot of sense in Baltimore. You put him there with Lamar Jackson and the weapons that they have there. Good night. That's a great pairing. Because the Ravens, obviously, they're the number one spot on the market now. And it kicks the Falcons down just a little bit. That's it. They just do, you know, and I do think that if the Falcons make a good impression on Kubiak, you could get him in here. And I think that it would make a lot of sense. Stefanski, though, is the other one that I really like at that level. And I think that makes you a little bit more attractive to a Stefanski, because I think Clint Kubiak, and you play the carousel, the musical chairs, I guess, of what this is going to look like. And you go Clint Kubiak to Baltimore, you go Kevin Stefanski to Atlanta potentially, and then you have Harbaugh up to New York. That's one that makes a lot of sense. Cleveland, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't think it's that awesome of a job, because you got to play the Ravens, you got to play the Steelers, you got to play the Bengals, and I just think that they're not in a great situation. You talk about the Titans, they're just, the AFC South has really taken some big steps forward. That's going to be one for, I think, a Joe Brady is really what makes the most sense for them. You go get a bright young offensive mind, somebody who can pair well with Cam Ward and potentially take that unit to the next level and be young and have a lot of flexibility to kind of mirror what you want to do moving forward with your team. That makes a lot of sense too. And I could see like a Robert Saleh or something like that moving in and taking over the Browns and things of that nature. So but the chairs are just beginning, and we are so early in this process. We haven't even heard how the interviews have gone. We don't even know if all the openings have been opened. So we've got a long way to go. I really appreciate that. And then Scott, he drops in here, says 250 people watching. We're actually up to 380 total people, which I really appreciate all of you guys. Welcome in here for the first time. Hit me with that thumbs up. I appreciate you. It only takes you a split second, so it really helps me. And again, super chats are the best way to jump in here. We've had 5 of those. I'll give you guys a quick shout out. We'll go through that one more time. Here's another good one with Mike McCarthy involved. And I think Mike McCarthy is one of those guys who is a little less talked about because he's not at the front of the mind. He's not a guy who, people remember right now because he's not in the NFL, right? He's won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. He had the Dallas Cowboys competing and winning at a high level. Why not have that guy? He's very similar to John Harbaugh. As much as people might sit there and scoff at that idea, he had the Packers winning, he had the Cowboys winning at a very high level. And if you get that guy here in Atlanta, you could win here at a pretty high level. Now, he's a little more old school. He's somebody who I think he would not be a sexy hire, let's just put it that way, but he's somebody who would come in here and win. And like I said, you have the talent here to win. It's just you had a lot of coaching mistakes. You had a bit of malpractice at times with your general manager making some quarterback decisions that didn't work out in your favor, and he gambled a lot. Just sometimes those gambles worked. James Pierce. Sometimes they didn't. Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. That's ultimately just the reality of the situation. Donovan says Lamar wanted Harbaugh gone. I think the report that I saw from NFL Network said that Brass fired him because he didn't want to fire Todd Monken, which tells me that Lamar Jackson wanted Todd Monken gone and Harbaugh didn't, and they sided with the quarterback. Take that for what you will. I'm speculating. Just kind of following the money there, if you will, and kind of keep rolling through. John Roberts says, according to the article I read, hopefully it was Falcons on SI, I read Kirk Cousins is saving the Falcons $32 million. Yeah, saving them a lot of money. And a lot of that with the base salary being converted and everything else in that situation. Go check out the article on Falcons on SI. You'll be able to go get more information on that. But they are splitting the contract into 2, likely, assuming that they part ways with him. But the leftover $32.9 million is going to move to 2027, and it effectively opens up $32 million, $32.9 million, if and when they cut Kirk Cousins with the post-June 1st, so they can split that dead cap hit and move it into 2 pieces. But yeah, no, it's saving him potentially a lot of money. So that's really interesting just in terms of cap flexibility and things like that, which I think is going to be very, very important for this team moving forward. Let's see. King TV says, man, we need a new young offensive coach. Kubiak's that guy then. I think Kubiak could be that guy. Stefanski could also be considered that guy, but of course he's had a couple of years there as a head coach in Cleveland. Maybe he wants to take a year off. We'll see. But yeah, no, I see we've got a whole bunch of things. Someone says Carson Beck, Halsey 2026. Carson Beck. I don't know. Second and Short says, can you talk a bit about why you want Kevin Stefanski? Well, because he's won 2 Coach of the Years, despite not having a quarterback. He's had an elite defense and they've won at a high level, but they've had a lot of issues there at the quarterback position, and they haven't been able to get it right. There is a reason he is a highly regarded coach in the NFL. Highly regarded. He got a lot of calls. Not quite to the level of a John Harbaugh per se, obviously, because Harbaugh's won a Super Bowl and he's been coaching in the NFL for 18 years. He produces talent and he's been able to get them into, I'd say, generally speaking, the top 15 of the NFL in terms of scoring, in terms of total offense, stuff like that, until he bottomed out these last 2 years. It's been bad in Cleveland these last 2 years, but before that, they were pretty damn good, right? That was a team that I don't think anybody wanted to play, and they were getting to actually get through there to the postseason. Another super chat here from King Fred 8 says, it's funny how people are hating Penix. He's good. Well, the jury's still out. I think that Michael Penix still has a lot of potential to be a consistent quarterback in Atlanta. I like the idea of Michael Penix. I think Michael Penix has a lot of talent. I think Penix was stunted with Zach Robinson as his offensive coordinator, who obviously I don't think is going to be back here in 2026. I don't get a lot of the hate here on Michael Penix, but in general, this is a guy who he has all-world arm talent. He's a guy who can throw the ball all over the yard, and he can do a lot of different things with that football, right? He is injury prone. He does lack some mobility, and I think that is a bit of a concern. And we're going to learn what other teams think of him just based off of how many people come and interview for this job or agree to come to Atlanta. Like if Clint Kubiak puts the Falcons, which he's only going to be able to interview with, I'd say a handful of teams this week, because he's got to go back to the Seahawks. And at that point, you're not allowed to speak with him, right? At that point, that's just kind of what it is. He only has so much time to give. So he's going to have to be picky and choosy about which teams he speaks to. So if he chooses the Falcons, that tells me that he's pretty high on the Falcons. It tells me that there's at least some level of mutual interest and that he could potentially be the guy. I'd imagine that the Ravens are going to put this request in for him as well. And if he is that guy, then maybe we'll see. But ultimately, I think Kubiak is my top candidate of the, I guess you could say, unproven head coaches. And we just crossed into the 400s, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's jumping into the pod. I know this is one of our bigger podcasts here that we've done in recent memory. And look, we've got a lot going on. We have a whole lot going on. And I just want to take this minute to remind everybody, we do this every Tuesday. We do this every single Thursday starting at 6:00. And we might do a couple more just as time allows. And now that we're in the off season, we might be able to jump in when there's breaking news or stuff like that. But we do this a good bit, so make sure to follow along. We try to do this a lot, and give me a follow at GChapATL on Twitter. I see there are a bunch of people over there on Twitter who are following along. So if you're there, and if you don't follow me, make sure to do it there. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the super chats. That's the best way to get in here. We've got a ton of comments that I'm trying to get to, as many of those as I can. But the super chats drop you right to the front of that line. But big thank you to everybody. This is one of our top shows here so far. Kind of rolling through. We're just finishing up just because I've been talking now nonstop for about 57 minutes. We've hit a lot of these things. Let's see Trenton. I wants to talk more Kubiak. Says Kubiak taking that interview when he only has a week to do so says it all. He's serious on us. After the season, we'll be one interview ahead of most teams. It's real. He does want to come here, which we don't know if he's accepted the interview yet based off of the news and the reports that I have seen so far. I'd imagine that he's going to have us on his list. I think he will. He's played us 3 times in the last 2 years. So he's pretty familiar here with the Atlanta Falcons, and I think ultimately that could be an interesting one. AJ says, I'll take Willis if his head coach comes with him. LOL. Malik Willis is an interesting candidate. I think Malik Willis has a chance to be the next starting quarterback of some team in the NFL. And I think he will not be the starting quarterback of the Falcons unless there's some kind of major setback with Michael Penix. And he's going to be signed by March anyway. So it tells me that he's probably not going to be the guy, because he wants to go somewhere, in my opinion, not basing this off of anything except for just human nature. He wants to go be a starter. Excuse me. So he's going to go somewhere where he can go start. That's not a guarantee you're here in Atlanta. Tells me that he's probably going to be going somewhere else. He can go to New York. He can go to Cleveland. He can go somewhere that's in desperate need of a guy they're going to pay out the butt to go get this guy. The Dolphins are another example of a team who probably needs a starter, especially if they're going to be parting ways with Tua Tagovailoa. But there are several teams like that who could be paying for him, and they'll probably pay more than the Falcons will, and they'll give him a chance to start. Falcons need more of a journeyman bridge quarterback, assuming that Penix is still the guy. If the new head coach and the new front office think that it's a different direction, then I think Malik Willis could potentially be that guy. He could be a good candidate. But I also have a list of potential starting quarterbacks there for the Falcons that I stuck out at Falcons on SI. Go check that out there as well. Michael Ronkila says, you're doing a great job, Garrett Chapman. Well, I appreciate you, Michael. Michael's always so positive. He jumps into this podcast all the time, and I really appreciate you, buddy. Avid listener, and I do think so. I think you're a pretty great dude myself. All right, so let's see. Ray Fitty says, Jake Matthews' time has ran out. It's time to upgrade that left tackle position. It's coming time. It's coming close to that period. I don't think that time is now, but I think that if you have a talented tackle prospects who drops in the draft, that's when you take him. Tackles don't become open very often. I do think that you can find a tackle in the draft. I think that that's probably going to be your best route. I think you can also delay it one more year because you have Caleb McGarry coming back at right tackle. Elijah Wilkinson showed you that he's capable of being a starter in the NFL, albeit not an elite one. He's not a great starter, but he's fine. He's serviceable. And then Dwayne Ledford's a really good coach. I think that Dwayne Ledford needs to be a big priority for this team moving forward. Get him back and go from there. But Jake Matthews he still has time. He still has time. And I don't think that his time in Atlanta is done. He signed an extension last summer or last fall, or last spring, I think, at some point. He will be here at least through next season, and then I would expect he retires. That's my thought. I'm not basing that on anything except for speculation. When his contract's done, I just think that's what it's going to be because he started every single game for you. But it is reasonable to expect that time is coming to an end sooner rather than later, just because he's on the wrong side of 30. He's been in the NFL for so long, and that wear and tear on your body takes a toll. But he's also got superhuman genes in there. The Matthews family, they start a lot of games, and they just play and play and play. But yeah, that's what I think. I'm gonna jump in, and Rio says he agrees. He had best year since his Pro Bowl year. Yeah, good call. Good call. And Rio, obviously you jump in here all the time. Big thank you to you as well, my friend. But folks, I've been going for about an hour. I'm about spent here. But again, jump in again on Thursday. If it's your first time, really appreciate all of you who took the time to jump into the Falcons podcast. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure to set that reminder and jump in with us. Big thank you to all of our people who did super chats. Let's see. We see Corey B. Carter says it's with the Rich McKay comment, and we have Rusty Moore. We want to talk there, and then Holden Boy is fly there. We got Dossier Gaming. We're talking about Matt Ryan. Trenton Flu says we love Garrett G Money. Chapman here's to stay. Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much. And then King Fred says it's funny how good people are hating on Penix. So big thank you to all of our super chats. Big thank you to all of our people jumping in. If it is your first time too, and you want to come back, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That's the best way to stay up to date on everything that we've got going on. We got tons of stuff going on. Lots of news coming out. So make sure you follow me at GChapATL on Twitter. That's where a lot of that news comes out. But Falcons on SI is going to be your home of all things Falcons moving forward throughout this process. Scott's going to be going live tomorrow morning, so make sure to jump in here and do that. But si.com/NFL/Falcons/on-SI. Just Google Falcons on SI. That's also a good way to do it there. But big thank you to everybody. We will see you all again very soon. It was a fun podcast, and hopefully we'll see you again here very soon. But until then, go Falcons.